And just like that, we are live. Good evening, good afternoon, or good lunchtime for you, Lisa. How are you
Yes,
both?
yes. Good.
We're good.
Hungry. But
This is fun.
This
Oh,
is fun.
hungry already. It is lunchtime. Yes, you've not had your lunch yet. Oh, dear.
soon.
So we said make sure you are subscribed in case we came up out of nowhere, and here we are coming out of nowhere with a little recap show that we thought that we would do to bring you a few tips and tricks and ideas. So Lisa, why don't you take us into what's the idea of being here this evening, this afternoon or
Excuse me.
lunchtime?
During my lunchtime. So the idea is we were going back through looking at the shows and we thought there's so many good little sound bites and things we are very helpful for you guys and that we've learned from watching and doing the show that we thought it'd be good to kind of focus on some of those and do a little round robin between the three of us to tell you our experiences with that particular thing our guest was talking about, and then give you some tips of how we can help you through our lens. So we've gone back to episode 1, which is with Diana Gladney, which was a fantastic episode, and kind of just found a few things that she talked about that I think would be important. We all think would be important for you guys to ponder and maybe get some new tips about. So we have little clips we're going to show you so you know what she was talking about. And the first one was about mindset. She was talking about having a mindset barrier and how that would slow her down and give her creative blocks. And we all get creative blocks. Yes, guys, it does
Yes.
happen. It absolutely
All
happens.
the
So
time.
we thought it would be important to kind of review and revisit what Diana had said and talk about that. How do we get past our creative blocks? So, Mark, you want to roll that for us?
Let's roll.
Roll the V.
I think sometimes when you achieve the bigger goals and milestones in your mind, you realize how close you really are to doing it if you follow through with it. And maybe the picture don't look exactly the way you imagined it. And then you realize you have to dream bigger. And so it was just kind of one of those things. And like I said, I went kicking and screaming. It took me a year to write it. And then when I actually sat down and write it, I got through the whole process mostly in 6 years. So the first 6 months, I would definitely say was a mindset barrier block, dealing with all of that. And the next 6 months was actually doing the work. So I didn't write it like initially doing it, but then once I kind of just submitted myself that this is something that I need to do, then getting into the mindset, I'm like, okay, well, obviously, because you deal with mindset issues with anything, or you have to at least address them, even if they aren't a hindrance. And so I'm like, let's dial it back. Because if it was me, just me talking to you and you ask questions, I'm going to give you the most analytical black and white explanation of the technicalities. And so if I hadn't approached it from who I want this book to serve, then I would have wrote an encyclopedia about video, and nobody wants to read that. And so that's how I got into like the mindset stuff first of, after I got into the process of deciding to write the book.
So there we go.
So, guys, Mark, I'm going to go with you. What do you do when you have that creative block or something's slowing you down and you're just not getting things out? What do you do? What's your tip?
So I'm going to take it back to what I did as a creative. So if we go back to my podcast, which is an education podcast, my biggest fear, mind block, was the fact that I'm not actually a teacher. I'm a musician by trade. I was interested in education. My kids were going through education. I was hearing lots of things within the education world while I was actually doing workshops. But I'm not actually a teacher myself. So to set up a podcast which is about education felt really bad from my point of view to begin with. It's like, well, who am I to be sharing this information, to be doing this information? Who's going to want to listen to me talking about it? Or who's going to want to come on the show because I'm not an expert in that field? And that was kind of where my sort of block came from. Wasn't quite sure what was going on with that. And it was only actually sort of a few episodes in, and then someone was saying, but your job isn't to be that expert. Your job is to be the host. You're the person that's actually guiding what's going on, creating the content, curating the content. having the conversations as someone who's an insightful person who's really interested in what you're doing. And then I felt much happier and much more at ease at what I was doing, because I certainly wasn't thinking I should be the person who knows it all. I'm just the person who's interested in what's going on, and my job became the facilitator and the host, which is the reason I set it up to begin with. So I think being really clear about what I was doing and why I was doing it, it changed my mindset, but it also meant that I was sort of doing it from my wheelhouse rather than feeling like I was sort of a duck out of water, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
That is interesting. I like the way it was almost like you're the facilitator. You don't have to be, as you said, the expert, and you can it's your show, and you can run that how you want, and have the experts on there to talk and guide and have those conversations.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I liked about it was the fact that the talking bit and the performing bit, we're on camera doing what we're doing, or we've got the audio side of it. That's the bit that I was good at. I'm a musician. I'm used to doing that. I quite like the conversations around education. I quite like the fact I can come at it at a different angle, because I'm not trying to stick to the status quo. I'm actually doing it because I want to maybe ruffle a few feathers or ask some questions, and then I kind of feel, well, actually, maybe I am the right person to do that, because I'm not trying to keep my job or make sure that I'm not going to put anyone in trouble. I can be honest and just be authentic in that way. And so, yeah, it's an interesting mind shift position, but I think, like I said, it kind of meant I felt like I was where I needed to be, and from that, everything sort of expanded from there.
Yeah, it was a thing of you finding your comfort zone and running with it.
Yeah.
Because we tell people to shy away from being too comfortable, but in this particular instance, you knew what you would shine at. So
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because it's kind of finding your comfort zone, as in this is kind of a world that I inhabit or happy to inhabit, but not in my comfort zone in terms of being used to interviewing people for a podcast. That was new. So it's that sort of double-edged sword. You sort of find that overall area that you want to inhabit. But certainly, yeah, I didn't feel comfortable. Certainly at the time, and even now, sort of nearly 400 episodes further on, there are still some things about it which make you smile inwardly when you sort of don't feel quite as mature and as confident as an experience as maybe you feel like you ought to be.
And Neil, do tell.
So, I mean, I started my YouTube journey quite a few years ago now, and I think I was coming into it from a point of, well, I'm starting to learn camera and video production in anger, as I say. And for me, it was almost like I was concerned that I'm joining this YouTube machine as almost like an imposter, because I don't have any real experience in video production, and I'm just learning. I'm just starting off with my camera. I've done a little bit in the past, but nothing crazy. And my started off with just trying to do basic vlogging, and then I got into the idea of, well, I'm going to sort of take topics that interest me, or a problem that I may have either with a piece of production gear or some sort of workflow that I'm trying to figure out. And I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to try and figure this out, then surely somebody else has got the same issue, and maybe that type of video that I'm doing may inspire and help other people. And it's always been a problem for me to sort of come up with ideas. What should I come up with next? How can I help people is the main thing, because who's going to listen to this guy with very little subscribers on his channel? I'm not an authority anything particular. So I'm thinking, well, if there's topics that are bothering me or I can't figure out, then maybe that would relate to somebody else in a similar situation. So I've really sort of, most of my videos are related to either trying to solve an issue for myself, or something that I found interesting, and something that I can help other people. And slowly but surely you find sort of your footing, you find your audience. And then there are some people that say, oh, thank you so much for putting this video out here. I was struggling with this. You had the same issue, and so on. And I guess even in this sort of competitive YouTube world where a lot of people are talking about the same things, it's your voice, it's your uniqueness, and it's you that's coming through in your personality that's maybe giving a different spin on that similar topic. It's your point of view. And I think that what helps get me inspired to create more content and so on, to just keeping in mind that it is my voice and it's something that I can relate to. And if it's interesting to me and I've got a problem, then maybe that's going to help other people. So, but it's not easy. every week I think, well, what am I going to do now? What's my next thing? And then going into live streaming is a completely different world altogether, because with recorded video, you can take your time, you can rehearse, you can have scripts, you can plan, and so on. And to an extent with a run of show, right, kids, because that's what we all should have on our live streams, still things can go awry, and you have to think a little bit more on your feet when it's live, as we're doing now. So, but that comes with time and just redoing it over and over, I guess.
Yes,
I just
definitely.
I just thought when you were saying that, I love the fact that you said about the competition side of it, because it's very easy to get into that mindset, isn't it? But actually, the reality
Yeah.
is I just suddenly had because people talk about, you know, having your community and your little bit of the world. I suddenly had this image of being in a pub. I don't know where that came from. Just the three of us chatting sort of takes me there. But I was sort of thinking, you know, you could, if you're in a pub and there's lots of tables, you know, everyone's with their friends, they've gone there to meet those particular people. They might even be having the same conversations, but in their own way, you know, whether it's a relationship thing or a work related thing, you know, the areas might be the same, but they wouldn't sort of cross pollinate for a different person because they don't have that relationship. And it's I think, like you say, getting rid of that competition idea, even though you know there's lots of people doing the same sorts of things, but with the fact that we all coexist in daily life talking about the same sorts of things, sort of, I just suddenly thought that's sort of a positive message, really.
Yeah, and I have taken inspiration from other people. I've looked at other people's maybe content about a particular topic that I'm interested in. I'm thinking, well, they've missed a few things here that they didn't mention, or that would have been important to say. So you're almost taking a similar idea and putting your own spin on it, and maybe even improving it to some extent. So there's always that as well, to take inspiration from others and learn and so on. Wasn't it Steve Jobs that said, you know, they've never, you know, was it good artists steal or whatever? They don't create from scratch. There's always a variation on a theme. So there's no reason why you can't do that as well if you do get stuck for ideas.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, in looking at other people's work and getting inspired, that breaks your creativity block. You know, it kind of gets you
Yes.
out of your head, which is nice, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Or if it's something I'm struggling with and banging my head against a brick wall and saying, I don't know how this works, let me make a video about it and see if I can get it to
Figure
work,
it out.
and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So it's just spinning the mindset. It's creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
what
just
about you,
creative.
Lisa?
yeah.
Oh,
What
for
do
me.
you do?
So, you know, when I get into the hamster wheel of content creation and you're which it is, and
It
you're
is.
stuck
Yeah.
on that one thing, it's like, I can't get it right, it doesn't sound right, it's not going to look right. I remove myself from the situation and I will go do something to break up my thought and my thought pattern and do something else. So maybe I'll go outside and pick a lemon and come back in and put it in a glass of water,
All
or
right.
I'll go, you know, do another little task, throw some laundry in or something like that. What it does is it takes me out of my head, out of my off the hamster wheel of trying to figure out this problem. And it's almost like you come back and you see things in a new light. It's like someone, you know, your computer screen, all of a sudden it goes, oh, that's what I need to do. So it's just removing yourself and just shaking things up. So you're not, you know, if you're so focused on one thing, your thoughts are remaining the same. You're thinking the same thing. You're finding the same problems. If you step away and, you know, shake your brain up a little bit, that definitely renews my creativity. And I come back and it may not solve the problem, but I can look at it in a different light.
I think that's really, really important. And just from my old career as an IT consultant and doing troubleshooting, there's many a time where you're trying to fix an issue, you're trying to dig into the weeds, and you've got all these problems, and your brain can't think, and people say sleep on it, right? The next day you're looking at it with fresh eyes, a fresh mind, and just that sort of break in the monotony of what you're digging into, like as you said, just going outside or maybe going to the garden,
Yeah, take a walk.
whatever it might be,
Whatever.
just to sort of break away, and then you come back refreshed, and it's it's really interesting, and I'd be interested to see if how other people deal with that as well. So you have to hit us up in the comments and tell us about your experiences and how you break
Yes.
the
Yeah,
hamster
I'd
wheel
please do.
monotony.
And, and on a sort of a bigger sort of viewpoint of that, do you think that's the same in terms of when you sort of take either a break from your show or you go on holiday and that kind of thing? You like say the hamster wheel of just doing the content regularly, but that kind of, if you think, do I need my show to have a different focus? Do I need to do a new run of show? Do I need a new kind of layout? But you're not quite sure, and because you're constantly just sort of reinventing the wheel week by week, as it were, maybe if you've got a weekly show, actually taking a step out, as in your actual holiday, because I'm terrible for kind of still thinking about what's going on, but to literally sort of convince myself that this week is purely about everything other than all of that, and thoughts and that still come in, but I'm just going to be thinking about the next cocktail or the next swim round the pool or whatever it has to be.
I think I know for me, when I travel, I find inspiration. It might be a sign or something. I'm like, oh, that would be cool for a thumbnail or something. So you kind of file it in your, memory bank. You don't have to act on it now. Go have your cocktail, but, file it away. And yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to, have that downtime from it.
I think you have to
Creativity,
switch off and
go ahead.
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
I
I
said,
was saying, I think you have to switch off, and it's really important to not always be thinking about the same thing, because then it just becomes a monotonous job, effectively. You're doing something for the love of it, and I know I keep going back to sort of what I used to do, but I was the same. It was very hard for me to switch off from work when I had that. You book your 2 weeks holiday or whatever, you take that time out, and that this is the only time you have in that year to just switch off from work. And it's very different when you're an entrepreneur or you're your own boss and you're doing your own thing. But when you're working in the machine, then it can take 3 to 4 days before it's like, well, I don't have a call, or I'm not supposed to be looking at this email and things. And it's very hard to switch off. And I think it's really important to just have clarity, to rest your mind, and just do something so detached from what you're actually doing day to day. It's healthy for you, because you cannot sustain a run-of-the-mill, keep going, churning out stuff all the time, because it's not good for you. And that's why a lot of creators do have this burnout, as they say, and it's because all they're doing is driving content, and it's not good for you. So drink water, rest up, sleep, meditate, whatever you need to do, but it's not all about this every day. So we're going live tomorrow, guys, right? I'm just kidding.
yes.
So,
I'm going to take 5 minutes off
Tomorrow.
now and then come back. Yeah.
exactly. But it's
And I
important, I
see
think.
we have a couple of comments. Mark, and
do?
if we set
Sure.
George says hello.
George,
George,
it's not a competition, George, tonight. There's no prizes, but you're welcome to join us. I'm just kidding,
There's no
George.
quiz.
I'm just kidding.
But we've won because you've turned up, and I really appreciate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, James.
It's made me laugh.
We're already talking about cocktails. We are.
Mark started it.
I did.
He brought it up.
Exactly.
I did, but it's the
Just a
fact that you
question for
ran with it.
James.
I think that's the reason we're here
Yeah.
today, isn't it? Is the fact that we've all got little ideas of these things. It's the fact that 3 of us decided that actually, we'll tick past
Why
the
not?
button and just keep it going and going and going.
I wonder if James is
Yeah.
back from NAB. I think he was there this week. I think it's finished today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Last day. Yeah. Thanks for joining anyway, James.
Yeah. But, as Lisa said, if you've got any thoughts on any of the stuff we're chatting about, do do stick them in the comments, because we'll be
Please.
delighted to hear it. Okay, should we watch the next video? Do you want to set the next video us up?
Sure. The next video, I'm getting my little notes there. So Diana was talking about on-camera confidence, which, we all have had that moment of suddenly nothing comes out of your mouth, or you forgot what you're going to do, or you're just feeling a little bit nervous. So she was talking about, for her, how she just dealt with having that moment of not feeling the fear of being on camera.
Okay, here we go.
I just logically try to process the fear. And it's like, it was no big deal to get in front of the camera. Was I nervous? Hell yes. I'd be sweaty like I just ran a mile or, a loop around the track or something. Got the Whitney Houston lip sweat and all of that. So let's not get it twisted. I still was nervous. You still are, trying to figure it out, but it's figure outable, as Marie Forleo would say. And so it's like, you get better at video. I just keep showing up and figuring it out. Like, people legit have children, a whole human being. They get married to somebody for the rest of your life that you know of. You know what I'm saying? Like, you make way bigger commitments, way bigger decisions than video, and this is for something that you actually want. So I don't look at the small potentialities. You know, you can come up with a way to deal with that. It's very easy. It's just not, I don't make this situation bigger. I just punch that bully in the jaw and move on.
Just like that. Just move on.
Love it.
Just like
Love
that. Mark, what do you do? What have you done
Who'd
for
you
on
punch,
camera
Mark?
confidence? And who'd you punch?
Who'd you punch?
Who did you punch?
done with 10 rounds. Well, I thought this was fascinating from my journey's point of view. So having done so many of my podcasts as audio only, I got very confident with the talking bit and very confident with the editing bit, and I could make almost any disastrous interview, whether it be the quality of the audio or someone doing lots of ums and ahs, or even just sort of going off topic and making it sound like a good piece of listening audio content. And then I sort of went into the live streaming world, and I'm very happy. Maybe, like, again, it's the musician in me. I quite like the live performance. I don't worry too much about it as long as I've got a run of show, an idea of what I'm trying to do. I'm quite happy to sort of see to the pants kind of thing and go with it, and didn't really worry about it that much. But in recent months, when I've started recording my podcast, that really hit me. And to Neil's point earlier, when he was kind of, oh, I quite like the fact that we're, I can do recorded stuff because I can rehearse and I can practice and do whatever. That's not quite the same when you're doing an interview, because you want to keep it natural in full flow. And my problem came with the fact that I'm not a massively experienced video editor. So while I was doing the recording side and I was on camera, my brain was going, don't make a mistake, because you're going to have to edit this. And if you edit that, have you got the skill set for that? Have you got the time to do that? And it wasn't so much about, am I happy here talking? It was kind of all that sort of background noise that was going on. It was then not being very helpful. And I sort of had to go full circle of kind of, I've done lots of interviews. I've done hundreds of interviews. I'm just doing the same thing. I've done live streaming. I'm used to sort of changing scenes and kind of trying to keep it all moving and having the visual side of it. And actually, if I do need to edit it, it's fine. I'll be able to do it. It's just the fact that for whatever reason, the back of my head was going, yeah, one mistake, that's an extra bit of this, or it's an extra bit of gigabytes and extra bit of hard drive that's going to sort of just ridiculous conversations going on. And I don't know where that came from or why it came out. And I had to work sort of hard to begin with and just go, I'm just going to do it. If I have to re-record an introduction 10 times, it'll be fine. And then of course you do half a dozen and then it's fine. And next time it's like one take and away you go. But you have to, it's almost like pushing through that barrier. And I quite like what Dinah said about the fact that, you make bigger decisions in all manner parts of your life. So why does it feel like such a big deal? But I think from that element for me was the fact that I'm kind of trying to make a big difference in what I want to do and the opportunity that maybe that's going to offer and what people are going to think of me about that. And it all often feels like it's your one opportunity, and that sort of feeds into the kind of, you can make mistakes, you can be authentic, it doesn't actually matter. But I think sometimes you feel like it's a all or bust kind of scenario, and I think that was back to the mindset thing, but actually from a confidence point of view on the camera was just kind of, just do what you've done already. You've got the reps, you know how that goes. And it's really good to be a long way into your journey as a content creator, as I have been sort of since 2016, to suddenly feel a little bit like you're a newbie again, because you kind of remember what that's like, especially if you're teaching others to do it, which I do from a podcasting point of view. And also then to think, oh yeah, this is what it feels like. And actually it means that I really do care about it. I really do want to do the best I can. And then let's put those little workflows in place and make sure it's going to come out as well as you possibly can. And then, like I say, the world doesn't stop spinning, even if it's a disaster.
And there will be disasters.
And there will be.
And just be okay with that. Just keep it going.
Exactly.
It is a really interesting point you bring up, though, about the whole, you weren't bothered about the recording piece at all, and the confidence of keeping the conversation going and not necessarily having to rehearse, with just having a run of show. Is the whole back end thing about like, oh, what now it's going to take me. Was it mainly the fear of not knowing how to edit effectively, or just the fact that if you did make a mistake, it was just going to consume more time, more cycles, and it's just more pressure for you to get that video edited and done?
Yeah, I think it's probably both of those things. It's partly the fact that I knew, an audio podcast, I knew, given how long the actual conversation was, that no matter what the scenario, I could do it within X amount of time. And I knew that if the video side of it suddenly really wasn't very good, one, I'd probably have to learn a couple of skills I hadn't quite got to yet. And actually, would I have time to do that? Because I'd sort of set up the sort of the release dates and all of those sorts of things. And then it's that kind of, I'm putting myself under pressure. And also people, having done it for so long, think you kind of know what you're doing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it as a video podcast now and it's all going to be fine. And then you sort of turn up and it's like, yeah, that doesn't look quite so good, does it? Or what are you trying to do? You sort of set this up as you're sort of expanding the way you want to show people what you're doing, and actually don't really know what you're doing, having been in your nice safe cocoon of kind of, I've done loads of sort of audio stuff. So yeah, that it's a fascinating world, and then meeting you guys, and you guys have got loads of experience in lots of different ways, and certainly from a tech point of view, which I don't have in that same way. So you sort of get into that kind of, oh yeah, I can make it better. I know what I can do, but do it within the framework that you can. And next month's another month, and there'll be another bit of gear or another insight into how to be on camera and be more confident, because I've done another how many in that time, and just go with the flow and enjoy it. Easier said than done, I know, but
Do you have a mantra you would give someone? I don't use that word, but not like just do it, but when that little, I love the word gremlin, comes into your ear, saying, "What are you doing? What you're doing? What are you doing?"
I mean, it's a little bit woo woo from that, but I would say just be present, because I think the thing that I realized is that my best conversations, I often can't quite remember. And it's just that I want to have this conversation, and I start all my interviews with we're meeting for a coffee, a glass of wine, a beer, whatever you're sort of happy doing, and we're going to chat about what we're passionate about and what we want to do. And then from there, it makes them relaxed, it makes me relaxed, and we just do it. And that's the same on camera or not, because you sort of done the prep to begin with to make sure it's looking good, and you're sort of all set up from that point of view. So then it's just about be present, just do what you have been doing, in my scenario. And in the same thing, even if it's your first things that you're recording, if you imagine that you were having, sat around the table having that conversation with someone over coffee, you wouldn't be worried about where you're sat and all this sort of stuff. You do whatever's natural, and you might then go back and change things afterwards. But just tell me about it. I'm really interested. What is it that you're in? What are you doing? What have you been working on? What are you trying to achieve? Who are you helping? And then all of a sudden you forget about the nitty gritty and the technical stuff, and it's about the human connection. And I think that's probably what we're all really here to do. We sort of get taken into that tech world, especially because we're talking about Ecamm and tech, and you're sort of sharing these stories. But I think once it becomes just about the personal, then it becomes much easier, because your brain's already in the right spot.
So it's not about you. It's not all.
It's all about
you.
me, but it's not.
It's
about
all
me.
about you. But I think remembering that it isn't about you. You're having the interview to feature somebody else. So stop worrying about yourself and focus on that other person. So Mr. Neil, what do you have to say?
Well, so getting confident on camera took me a while, specifically when it was coming down to doing live streaming. And live streaming for me, even before I started using Ecamm, I aligned live streaming to talking on Zoom calls to customers and so on. And back in the pandemic, when everybody was working remotely, there was a lot more interaction, just like we're doing now. You'd be in a Zoom call with a room full of people, and you'd either have to give a presentation or a public talk about a particular topic. It might be a technical topic, it might be a workflow, it might be something like this. And I remember before the Zoom days, I used to be a motor mouth trying to get my point across very quickly, filled with ums and ahs and all that. And I watched a video back. Somebody was filming me giving a public presentation at my company, and it was super cringeworthy. It was awful. And to see yourself be like that, get nervous, be very inarticulate, not seeming to get your point across, and more importantly, not appearing to be knowledgeable in the subject that you're trying to talk about, is quite horrific to see back. So I made a conscious decision that if I was to give more presentations in the future, I'd do one thing. I would slow down, and I would take my time and give myself some space to think about what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. And there was always this fear that if you did talk a little bit slower, that people would try and interrupt. They would think that the conversation was finished, your point had been done, and it's their turn now to speak up. So when you're giving a presentation, you don't have to worry too much about having those interruptions, because people are there to listen to the subject matter that you're talking about. So slowing down, taking your time, giving yourself some pace, giving yourself some breathing space, it helps so much in just being able to get those points across without having to constantly think in your head, like you said before, Lisa, the little hamster wheel. And now it's a hamster wheel of words that's going round, and I have to think about what I'm talking about next. So giving yourself a little bit of grace and space and taking time to speak without worrying too much about these filler words, which you can remove in the script, but it's better if you don't have to. And you just sound a little bit more confident. You know the subject matter, and you can just breathe a little bit. And that's the thing that's helped me the most, especially having to give many more presentations via Zoom on complex subjects and things. And you don't necessarily have to worry too much about the subject if you know it, and just slow down. And that's helped me so much. And even when I'm doing the recorded videos now, or even the podcast that I'm doing in bits and pieces, I will try and consciously take my time in speaking as I'm doing now, and not worry about trying to put in these filler words because they're unnecessary. And I think I heard it was Stephanie that mentioned about when you think that you're going to say or whatever it might be, breathe in. You can't say these filler words if you're breathing in. So if you inhale in between some of the words or sentences, it will give you that time to pause and so on. So I thought that was a great tip, and something that I'll try and do, even though I said the word
Well, it's interesting. Those pauses, I feel, draw people in because they're like, what is he going to say next? And
Nothing
seriously,
interesting, clearly.
yeah, it's just about to boost you up.
No,
No, but it does pull people in, and they become more involved and engaged and curious about. He has something to say because he is taking his time telling me this. I think there's something to
Right.
that. So, and I love your
Thank
voice, and I love your cadence and how you deliver on camera. So, bravo to you, sir.
Yeah.
It doesn't come naturally, and it takes work, but that's what we're here for, right? At the end of the day, if we learn and if we keep doing it, and I think we said before, recording yourself and just watching it back, even I think Diana said that, and I think Marilu said that, just keep recording. That's how you get confident on camera, just watching yourself back.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch yourself, isn't it? I think
It is.
first time, right?
And I think asking people if you can bear the feedback, ask people what they think. And the reason I thought about this is because I had a tennis lesson earlier today, and he was a fantastic coach, and it's the second one I've had with this particular coach, and he did a few simple things that made all the difference. And I think what struck me was the fact I said to him, I said, it's so obvious when you've pointed it out, but there's no way I could find that on my own. It's what I had been sort of striving to do things, and then they weren't quite working, but I hadn't quite clocked what that happened to be, a straight arm for the throwing the ball toss, or, just a little hand position of whatever. And you need someone else looking at it sometimes to actually be able to point that out, which I think is important. So like I say, you can do it yourself if you've recorded yourself and you can critique yourself, but maybe sitting with someone who's a trusted friend or a colleague that is going to be on your side, just to, what are those little things that maybe I'm doing? Am I speaking too fast? Am I doing those filler words or whatever they happen to be? And I love the fact, well, there are two things that you mentioned there which I really liked. One was the fact that you've brought in your expertise off camera in terms of that presentation. So like I say, it was a Zoom thing, but even sort of pre that, if it was in a presentation in a room and that kind of thing. So I think there's lots of skills that we have that we can bring into this sort of creator camera field, as it were. And also, as Lisa said, I think your delivery and your presentation, it seems so secure and sort of fitting for the way that you do it. And it's really good to hear that you were really conscious about how that went, because you often talk as if you stepped into this sort of online world, having sort of had your IT career and this is all new and whatever, but you come across like a real pro, as if you've been doing it forever. And I thought, either you've got that sort of that natural ability just to be able to do it, but I think it's really reassuring to sort of hear that, there's a conscious reason behind what you do and how you got to that decision as well. And I think then we can all feel like, no matter what we're doing today, tomorrow we can do it slightly differently, and that's going to obviously evolve as time goes on. But yeah, it's really, really interesting and fascinating to hear.
Well, thank you both of you. It does mean a lot. And it has taken some time, and it's only through just, as you said, Mark, just reviewing, watching yourself back and getting that criticism. And it does work wonders. If you with the ego situation, it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, there's always room for improvement. Every day I feel I'm learning something new, whether it be a different way to present something or whatever it might be. This is a journey, and you'll never get to be 100%, but whatever you're doing, just build on that, learn from it, and just improve, and it will come.
Yeah. Practice, 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 review, and let go of your ego.
Exactly.
Simples.
Ego.
Simple.
Nobody needs
Ego,
that.
bye.
Simple. Let go of the ego. Yeah, thanks a lot.
And ego go.
Job done.
Yeah, exactly. And if these tips work for you, then let us know. Send a check in the post too.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
So Lisa, go for it.
So I'm going to roll back to before you even get in front of the camera. Sometimes and I'm speaking for myself personally, sometimes my energy is low, or you've been scattered with something else before. So just warming yourself up before you go live or record something is really helpful. So jump up and down, like whatever that's going to give your body physically, give it some energy. Jump up and down, make stupid faces. I was going to do it, but I'm not going to, squish your face around or whatever. Go online and find some of those warm up exercises that you can do, Peter Piper, pick the peck, whatever it is. That's for plosives, isn't it? Anyway. But you know what I'm saying? To find those exercises that you can do just to wake yourself up, because, your energy transfers into the camera, and then that transfers into your audience. And so people can feel when she's a little slow today, or she's hyped up, she had too much coffee or whatever, they can feel that. So you guys are laughing because you've seen that. But just do those things to wake yourself up. And then as you're doing your show, until you get to a point that you feel really comfortable, don't go in there cold turkey trying to go off the top of your head. Have some type, know what you're talking about, know what your topic is, or know a little bit about your guest, at least if you're doing an interview. But have some type of bullet points. You have to have a whole script written out, but have some bullet points of, basically a run-up show, I guess. But it's not even that. It's just having some bullet points about what you're going to talk about. If you're doing an interview and it goes another direction, have some extra questions that can take you in that other direction. So you're not in your head, and then all of a sudden now you're nervous of, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to say. Okay. There's the see how that happens. So I would just say, just warm yourself up and be prepared, have something in front of you.
I like that idea of just giving yourself some energy. I've been watching a few videos on Qigong, and it's a lot of tapping on the arms just to start to get that energy flowing. And it is interesting because, like tonight, for example, it's been a long day. I thought, but you also get energy from other people when you've got a wonderful team like I have, where you're very energetic, and there's the guy behind you, Mark, and and you come across, you're full of energy, you're smiling. It's just a nice pre-show. We're ready to go. And it's those types of things that help me as well. You do get a lot of energy from other people and so on. But if you're on your own and you just need to warm yourself up, absolutely, that's a great way as well. Just to release that energy. And as you said before, Lisa, maybe just go outside and do something else. You've been sat in front of the computer all day, then the last thing you want to do is do another hour session do a recording or a live show or something. Just go away, do something else, shake it off, slap your face, whatever you do, and then away you go.
Yeah.
I
do that if I've got back-to-back podcast recordings. I do that. I purposefully, run up. I'm 2 floors up here, so I'm up and down the stairs a couple of times. Even if I haven't drunk all my water, I go and refill my glass, or at least
Right.
if it's the weather's like it is at the moment, which is really nice. Just step out into the garden, take a few deep breaths, and then you sort of come back and reset. And what I've really learned from doing this show, I mean, for those people who obviously don't know how we sort of set it up before we go live. So we go live at 9:30 UK time, but we meet at 8 o'clock. And part of that's a kind of a tech run, make sure we're happy with everything, make sure our systems are in place. And that's probably another video. But what it does is the fact that by the time we press live, we're rocking and rolling from that. Like I say, the energy's up, we're in the same place. We're sort of the show's started way before it suddenly hits YouTube, and I really like that, and it's something I've definitely brought into my own work from that point of view, because especially when it's only you that's bringing the energy, just knowing the fact that you're supporting someone else if they're coming on your show, or like you say, or you're bringing that whole feeling of what that's going to be like, and that isn't just a question of turning the camera on and pressing record or pressing go live. Like Lisa said, it starts way before that, and that's been a really fascinating journey for me just in these last few months that we've been doing it.
I'm just wondering how you managed to not spill your gin and tonic when you rode down the steps, though. But just ask the question.
I use my Ecamm mug, which is watertight.
You can shake it, turn upside down. I don't care. This gin ain't coming out.
Exactly.
There you go.
Just keeping the ice
Oh my
moving
gosh.
around a little bit softer.
Let's see. Do we have any
Oh, dear.
comments over there, Mark?
Yeah, we do. So, hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think this was a comment based on what you said about sort of being present and sort of being where you are now.
Exactly.
And George, interesting. Sort of heard that sort of public speaking say the same thing. The arm alert, listeners, but it does sort of mean there's something coming up, because you can hear the cogs whirring, and it's that kind of doing
Right.
that. And so I love Neil's idea in terms of that sense of if you have the pause, if you take a breath or whatever, the same thing is. And as Lisa quite rightly said, you have that. So I'm being drawn in. That there is something coming, and also, I mean, I'm terrible sort of voice inflection sometimes, but I want to get more and more excited because I want you to sort of get more and more in that. And actually, going the other way, just that I'm now okay. So I'm now just going to take a breath, but also I'm going to be a bit softer. I'm just going to think about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to deliver it, and actually, it can be much more impactful than just being on 1,000,000 miles an hour and being on that coffee train.
Coffee chain.
And there's nothing wrong with obviously getting enthusiastic and excited about things. It just depends on the topic and the subject. But and you go the complete opposite way, where people have no inflection, and it's just, and we're talking like this today, and it's the weather, and it sounds very monotone, and so you have to be conscious. But again, you don't really hear yourself when you're talking, so just as we mentioned before, even if it's just an audio piece, just record your voice and see what it sounds like, because if it sounds like that to you, it's going to obviously sound like that to everybody else.
And I think it's a quick tip if you are recording audio only, or even using your teleprompter. It's taking your script and marking it up where there should be a little more energy in that point, or maybe you bring it down, it's a little bit softer.
That's good.
And then you have those cues visibly written as you're reading, especially for audio, and that'll help you, just go through it and kind of mark that up, and it will help you as you're doing the recording.
I love that.
That's an excellent tip. I like that. So you can mark red for like enthusiastic, and then
or
blue for like
doodle on it. I mean, I've
whatever.
had like an arrow going up, and little smiley thing or a little sad face, because now it's time to to be a little more serious or whatever. So whatever works for you. But it's
it's almost like a screenplay kind of thing. You're sort of you're setting the scene around the words that you've got there to deliver,
and being intentional about how you're delivering it. So,
intentional.
I like
what a word that is.
I have a quick question for you both. If and when you've used scripts in the past, when you're writing a script, do you write it as how? I know it sounds a silly question. Are you writing it as how you would speak it? I.e., for me, when I'm writing a script for specific technical points where I just can't remember and I have to write down in a paragraph, I'm going to put the commas in places and pauses in places and hyphens in places where you wouldn't normally have that in the written word. It's only for me to know I'm going to pause here. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go to a new, whatever it might be. And it helps me when I'm actually reading, because sometimes when you're reading, it doesn't come off as natural if you're reading for something. So there's a way of maybe writing it out longhand with the commas, with the spaces, with the hyphens to help you break up the cadence in your speech and helping you speak better when you're reading a script. I'm not sure how you do that.
So something I've done, and it was based on something else I was writing, is I just turned on my recorder, my voice recorder, and I talked out, because you're thinking it in your head anyway as you're typing, correct? So I
Yeah.
just talked out what I would have been thinking in my head, physically writing down, and then listen to it, listen back to it. You can now run it through Descript or whatever. Before it was
Right.
another thing I used, and get the actual transcript and then work from there. Because now you're doing it in your natural language.
I like that.
You know?
Yeah. So you're not writing it out
Yeah.
first, then
Yeah.
having to make it sound like you're actually
Yeah.
recording
And then
it. Yeah.
then
That's
you
good.
tweak it. I mean, that's just one, if it's very
That's a good tip,
technical,
that.
obviously you're going to try to, I think you should sit down and write it write it out so you don't forget
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But if it's just you talking and just trying to deliver something to an audience, I would say turn on your voice recorder. It's very
Yeah.
interesting to see how you speak. That's another way to test and see how you are speaking on camera, and listen to yourself too.
I had a very interesting process. I was asked to do. Have you come across Listenable?
No.
No.
So Listenable is like an audio-only platform, but for things that you're trying to deliver, like a training or kind of basically training or sort of service kind of idea. So they asked me to do it, and mine was related to podcasting. So they also want you to actually submit the text as well as the actual lessons. They're essentially into lessons or whatever it is that you're sort of trying to explain. And there's something like 10 lessons. And I started by thinking, well, I'm a podcaster, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to record them. I'm going to transcribe them. Job's a good one. Didn't work for me like that very well because I like chatting and I kind of go off a bit of a tangent and I'm not very succinct and I couldn't kind of get it as it needed to be. And in the end, I wrote out what I thought was needed, and it was a bit more succinct and had a bit more clarity to it. Had a little bit more of a bit more breadth and a bit more understanding of what I was trying to do, and I could sort of piece all of that together. And it was a really fascinating thing. So then when I came to record it, I had to talk in a way that I wouldn't do if I was just chatting like I am now. But it came across in that sort of lesson by lesson kind of journey that I was taking someone on in a much more kind of organic kind of way. So it kind of fitted for that. But it was almost the reverse of what I thought would be the case. I think if I ever did another one, it would be probably a combination of both, because I'm a bit more experienced in that sort of thing now, where I'd record it first and then maybe transcribe myself into a more written word and then do a combination of both. But it was a fascinating thing to do. It took me all summer to do these 10 lessons, but it was a really interesting sort of process to go through.
I've never heard of that, but it is really interesting when you're either writing some stuff out and expecting it to sound like you. It's just never going to be the same. And I think Descript is really good for just letting you free flow. If you're doing a podcast, for example, or doing some form of audio, then if you're just speaking into Descript, you can make those mistakes. And when you're cutting them out, because you can easily read them, even though Descript has got its problems, but I think it's the best platform for this, you can make a really decent sounding podcast episode or an audiogram or whatever it might be, just from almost like a stream of consciousness if you've got a topic that you're interested in. And you can just take out the best bits. And providing you play it back and make sure it fits and don't get these, stutters or it sounds disjointed, then I think then it's a great platform for that and doing it that way. So similar to your point about recording you and then transcribing it and then just being able to edit it out. That's great. If only we had that 10 years ago. But thing.
Yeah.
Indeed. Oh, brilliant. Any more comments from anybody watching? Do let us know. Put it in the chat, and we can bring it up before we start to round everything off. But we really hope you found this interesting. Lisa, it's a great idea, and it's a great way for us to revisit. And interestingly, having listened to Diana's stuff back, you forget some of the conversations you have, and it's a little bit like I was talking about the mindset in terms of the way you actually have the conversations while you're recording stuff or when you're on camera. Is the fact that when I go back and edit stuff, I'm like, God, that sounded really interesting. I'd like to know that was me actually being involved in that, and you can't remember it in the here and now in the same way.
Yeah.
It's only when you go back to it you sort of come at it from that sort of audience point of view rather than the presenter or sort of in that situation.
I think it's nice to go back and reflect on what we've already done in terms of shows, because I'm the same as you. There's some snippets, and listening back to the shows later, because I like to do that as well, just to see how the shows run. There's so many things that you miss because either we've got questions that are getting ready to be asked of the guest, like you, Mark, you're actually controlling the entire show. If Lisa, as this week, is actually being the host and asking all those questions to Liz in our last example, you just don't take it all in, right? And you're just simply letting it go, and then it's the end of the show. We had a good time, and thanks a lot. And we remember that it was a good show, but we don't necessarily remember all the content in it, which is cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you, Lisa, for what a great idea.
I love this idea. It's great. We should definitely do more of that.
Yes, definitely.
Bits and bits. I don't know what we're going to call the show, but I think
bits and bits.
Bits and bits.
Snippets and bits. I don't know. We'll think of something.
Yeah. Answers on a postcard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, no more stuff coming through. So shall we say good evening to everyone, or
Sure.
good evening from the UK, lunchtime or afternoon, or wherever you happen to be. This has been fab. Great to hang out with you guys again. I get a little bit of missing you when we have to go a whole 2 weeks in before being able to be live again. So this has been a great idea, and yeah, we'll be back again very soon. Back in a week and a half for our next live interview. But who knows when we'll pop up again for one of these impromptu live streams. We will see you very, very soon.